The sound of shattering glass woke me up in the dead of night, and before my heart had the chance to steady itself, I was already on my feet, stumbling toward my sister's room. I knew that sound. She'd broken another frame. That was the third this week. We didn't call the police anymore. They'd been here twice already and chalked everything up to teenage anxiety. But this wasn't anxiety. This was something else. Something that clung to the walls of our home like mildew no matter how many times we painted over the memories. I found her sitting on the floor, knees pulled tight to her chest, surrounded by shredded canvases and cracked wooden frames, her hair tangled like it hadn't been brushed in days. Her hands trembled, still smeared with streaks of oil paint, carmine, ochre, and black. So much black. Her eyes were bloodshot but wide open, staring at the space where a painting had once hung. The one she'd finished just the night before. It had been her best one yet. A lonely child, barefoot in a forest, looking over there. Shoulder with a face half shadowed, half screaming. Something about the eyes too wise, too knowing, had unsettled even me. We fought about it at dinner. I told her she needed to stop painting stuff like that. She hadn't eaten since. He's in the woods, she whispered as I helped her up. Still screaming, but no one hears it there. Who? I asked, even though I knew I wouldn't like the answer. She didn't reply. Just pressed a paint-stained finger to her lips. The therapist said it was her way of coping. After our parents died in that fire 3 years ago, my little sister Elena, only 12 at the time, started painting non-stop. It was her sanctuary, her therapy, her escape. But over time, the paintings turned darker, more disturbing. The kind of imagery that made teachers call home and church groups whisper. Children with broken limbs but hollow smiles. Families turned away from burning homes. Forests, always forests, filled with ash-colored figures. But it wasn't until one painting, a recent one, that things truly began to unravel. It was still hanging in the garage. The only one she didn't destroy. Maybe she couldn't. I'd looked at it dozens of times, convinced it was a place I'd seen before, but something about it shifted every time I blinked. A hill with a lone tire swing, under an ancient elm, and behind it, a small, tilted shack with its door barely open. The child in that painting had their face turned away, yet I could swear I recognized them. Then came the Amber Alert. 12-year-old boy. Missing for 2 days from the neighboring town of Ridgemont. Last seen wearing a red hoodie and black jeans. And the picture they posted? It was the child from Elena's painting. Not similar. Not kinda. The exact same face. Same solemn eyes. Same messy dark hair. Same red hoodie. I nearly dropped my phone when I saw the alert. My hands were shaking too hard to dial, but I forced myself to call the police. I told them about the painting. About Elena. About everything. They thought I was out of my mind. They sent someone to check in. A welfare visit. But by the time the officer arrived, the painting was gone. Burned. Ashes in the backyard fire pit. Elena claimed she never painted it. Said I must have dreamt it. She smiled when she said that. But her hands were blistered. Days passed. The missing child was still gone. And then another painting appeared. This time, it was worse. She'd nailed it to the wall of our hallway at midnight. I woke to the sound of hammering, found her barefoot and humming. The painting showed a waterlogged playground, broken swings half submerged in mud. In the corner, a shoe. Just one. I begged her to stop. I even threatened to take her paints away. She laughed. You think this is paint, she said. I just show what I'm told. By who? I screamed. But she didn't answer. Later that week, I saw something on the news. Another child, a girl this time, missing from a rural school near Clearview. In the footage, they showed police searching a playground. The same playground. The same broken swings. Even the shoe was there. I sat down hard, like someone had kicked the air from my lungs. And that's when I started keeping a journal. Because I knew I was going to need proof. Proof that she wasn't imagining this. That I wasn't going insane. That something was happening, something too big for our little town, too terrifying for anyone to believe. But I believed. Because that was only the beginning. And worse, much worse, was still coming. Spitat essay model a ChatGPT. The whispers started with the neighborhood kids first. It was harmless, muttered rumors behind cupped hands, glances over shoulders as they passed our gate. They said Elena was cursed. That she drew dead people. That her eyes glowed at night. That the forest behind our house had no bird song anymore because she scared the birds away with her nightmares. But then, something shifted. Point one of them, a boy named Tyler who lived 2 streets down, went missing on a Thursday morning. His mother had just dropped him off at the bus stop. She turned to grab her phone from the car seat, and when she looked back, he was gone. Not a scream. Not a shoe. Nothing. By Friday evening, our mailbox was set on fire. I found a charred piece of notebook paper shoved under the front door that read, "You knew. You let her draw him." I sat in the living room, gripping that note so hard my knuckles ached. The whole town was turning against us, and I didn't blame them. Deep down, a part of me was terrified that maybe, just maybe, they were right. Elena hadn't spoken much since the second painting. She barely ate. She didn't sleep. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to find her standing in the hallway, staring at the walls like she could see through them. Once, I found her kneeling in the backyard, whispering to the soil as if it were breathing back. And then came the third painting. This one was different. It was huge, nearly 7 feet across. It had been nailed directly to her bedroom floor. I didn't even know she had a canvas that size. It showed a well. Just a stone well with moss growing around its mouth, set against a backdrop of withered trees. But the well was full of hands. Dozens, maybe hundreds of hands, all reaching up. Some were small. Some skeletal. One, in the corner, had a neon green plastic ring on its thumb, the exact same ring Tyler wore the last day anyone saw him. I threw up in the bathroom after seeing it. I tried to call Child Protective Services. Left 3 messages. No reply. I tried the police again. They sent another patrol car, but the officer just looked tired. Skeptical. When I tried to show him the painting, Elena had already covered it with a rug. She sat in the corner, drawing shapes on the carpet with a stick of charcoal, staring at him with a gaze so steady it made my skin crawl. He left after 15 minutes. Told me to get some rest. That night, I heard the door creak open at 3:12 a.m. Not just any door, the back door. The one that led into the forest. I jumped out of bed, adrenaline crashing through me, and sprinted down the stairs barefoot, calling her name. The porch light flickered as I opened the door. The night air was sharp, too cold for July. And there, standing just beyond the tree line, was Elena. She didn't move when I called to her. She didn't even blink. I ran to her, grabbed her shoulders. She was ice cold, like she'd been submerged in water. Her eyes were rolled up into her head, and she was murmuring something too fast for me to catch. Elena. Wake up. Her head snapped toward me. They want me to show you, she said, her voice ragged and raw. They say you're not listening. Who? I asked, trembling. She didn't answer. She just turned and started walking deeper into the forest. I should have stopped her. I should have called someone. But something in her voice, something in that terrible, unbearable painting, told me this was the only way I'd understand. So I followed. The forest behind our house was dense. Suffocating, the air thick with moisture and secrets. Every snap of a twig beneath my feet felt like a gunshot. The deeper we went, the quieter it got, until the silence was so absolute it buzzed in my ears. And then we found it. The well. It was real, exactly like her painting, down to the moss, the missing stone on the right side, the faint scent of iron and wet earth. Elena stood at the edge, swaying slightly, and I grabbed her arm. What is this? I whispered. How do you know it's here? She looked up at me, her eyes suddenly clear. I don't, she said. But they do. She pointed down into the well. I couldn't see anything. Just darkness, and then, I heard it. A child's voice. Faint. Crying. Sobbing. It was coming from inside the well. I stumbled back, heart pounding in my throat. Elena didn't move. Just stared down, as if memorizing something. I pulled her away and dragged her back home. I wanted to believe it was sleepwalking. That I'd hallucinated it. That grief had warped my mind so badly I was hearing things. But the mud on our feet told another story. And in the morning, when I checked the fire pit, the ashes of the third painting were still warm. I barely slept after that. I started researching missing children, cold cases, strange phenomena. I found forums full of stories, artists who dreamed things before they happened, children who painted their own deaths, forests with wells no one remembered digging, and then the FBI came not to help. To investigate, because they found something in Ridgemont, Marais. Child. Half buried, wearing a red hoodie, and his face matched the one in Elena's first painting perfectly. Suddenly, everything we'd tried to bury was being unearthed, and something, didn't want it to stop. The thrill of discovery ripped through me the moment the FBI van screeched onto our street. Uniformed agents swarmed the perimeter as if we were a crime scene, and maybe we were. Every step I took, the crunch of gravel underfoot reminded me. We had descended into a nightmare that refused to release us. I caught sight of Elena through the living room window. She stood perfectly still, her silhouette outlined by the garish blue and red lights flashing outside. In her hand, she held a paintbrush, caked in mud and something darker that I couldn't name. It trembled. Stay inside, I told her. But she only shook her head, her dark eyes shifting like pond water in a storm. I opened the door before anyone could stop me. The air slammed into me, cold, electric, suffused with fear. An agent stepped forward. Ma'am, this is federal property. Now, he didn't finish. The second he saw Elena, he froze. Their eyes locked. I watched as his face went slack, his breath catching in his throat. Her paintings, he said, voice unsteady. She knew. That confirmation sparked something in me, rage, desperation, protectiveness all at once. I grabbed Elena's hand and pulled her away. We ran through the kitchen, past the garage, and out the back door, straight into the forest. Branches whipped our faces. Roots tore at our shoes. But we didn't stop. We only slowed when the musty door of the well creaked open, waiting. Elena paused. She turned to me, eyes brimming with something raw and desperate. They need me to finish it, she whispered. To show them. Show who? I begged. But she just shook her head and stepped forward, into the well's moat. I lunged after her, grabbing at her jacket. My fingers stretched but couldn't grasp fabric. Down she went, swallowed by darkness. I sobbed, my voice bouncing off ancient stones. Then I heard it, a faint splash. The brush she dropped hit water somewhere deep below. I could feel her hesitation, the thud of skin on stone, 2-3 times, then silence. My cell phone buzzed. The FBI tracking us. I could hear their distant calls, radios, shouts. I looked back at the well. The night was deathly still. And then, I saw movement, barely perceptible, a pale arm rising, slipping back into darkness. A child's hand, not Elena's. Smaller. Fingers curved like a fish's. My throat closed. I dropped to my knees. My hand slipped against ancient stones as I lowered my head, helpless. Elena. I screamed. Elena. A ragged breath answered me back, then another, and another, not from the well, but behind me. I spun around. There, in the underbrush, stood the boy from the painting. The missing child. Red hoodie. Mud-smeared face. His eyes met mine, empty, old, and knowing. He spoke. Without moving his lips. He's hers, the voice echoed inside my mind. Her canvas completes the story. I staggered back. My mind screamed with confusion. How? Why? The forest groaned, trees shifting, shadows gathering around us. The boy stepped toward me. Each step silent, deliberate. My legs trembled. Behind him, another figure emerged, Elena. She crawled from the bushes, hands scraped, eyes unfocused. Finish it, she whispered to the boy. Her lips quivered. Please, help me. He smiled, cold, malformed. I felt sick. And I prayed it was something deep in my soul pulling me onward. I took a step forward. Then another. Drawn by terror and love both, the boy stopped. Tilted. His head. Blood ran from where his hoodie had torn. He collapsed at my feet, exhaling a wet gasp that smelled of earth and rot. Elena knelt beside him, cradling his head. He needed eyes, she said softly. To see home. My head reeled. I looked at the well, at the boy, at my sister. Time slipped. I could feel the forests pulsed out a single, cracking whisper. Paint, it said. In an instant, Elena rose and sprinted back toward the house, toward her paints. Through the trees, I chased her. I heard heavy footsteps behind me, FBI agents. Now emergency responders, defibrillator pads, radios crackling commands. Inside the garage, Elena stood before a blank canvas. There were paints, brushes, water jars, untouched. She dipped the brush in crimson. A final storm of creation. Every stroke wild, precise, cataclysmic. My voice cracked when I spoke. What are you drawing? She didn't look at me. He's here, she said. But he can go. A moment later, the canvas was covered in red. Not paint. It was something dark, thick. My heart seized as I recognized darker fluid seeping onto the floor. I lunged forward, tore the brush from her hand. Stop. My screams echoed. Everything went quiet. Her head dropped. The paintbrush clattered against the concrete. Crimson pooled. I heard a gasp. A pop, then a lifeless groan. The red dripped. Paint? Blood? I couldn't tell. I opened my mouth to scream for help, but nothing came out. I backed into the doorway. Behind me, FBI agents racing in, lights flashing, medics rushing. Behind them, outside the garage, the boy in the red hoodie emerged, pale and silent, his eyes fixed on Elena's empty stare. Then he turned and walked into the forest. I never saw him again. My sister was taken away. For the blood on her hands. For the paintings. For knowing things no one should know. The files are sealed now. The world outside our street moved on, but sometimes, late at night, I wander to the edge of the forest. I stare at that moss-covered well. The trees there seem to shift, to breathe, and I wonder, is it calling us still? Is it waiting for the next canvas?